Okay, and I'm going to share my screen, everybody. We're going to screen number 2, and you should be able to see the fall Zoominar series. Give me a head nod, Dr. Kosker, if that's what you see. Yes? Okay. All right, so let's begin. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join me today. We have an informal session here today, and I say informal because today's session does not carry with it continuing education credit. Today, we're going to talk about profitability and the QME evaluation, and those are not the type of topics that the Division of Workers' Compensation provides continuing education credits for. So we're off the grid today. There will be no examination at the end of the discussion. And really, I'd like to consider this session to be more of a mastermind session where we can all come together, share some ideas about what it's like to practice as qualified medical evaluators and what we can do together as a group to improve the QME experience. Now, I don't know how many of you on this call are CSIMS members, but I'll just let you know, and maybe you already know, that CSIMS has a message board where CSIMS members can write in and post their issues on the messaging board, and the members can interact and participate. And one of the recurring themes through the threads at the CSIMS messaging board is that profitability for QMEs is a big issue. It seems that what's happening right now is many appointments are canceling. Many appointments, qualified medical evaluators that used to be booked out in advance 12 weeks in advance are now booked out 8 and 9 weeks in advance, and they're seeing their evaluations and their profitability shrink. So this is a big issue right now. And so I want to take the opportunity today to discuss that with you and just share ideas as to what we can do to improve the profitability of our evaluations. So I have several good ideas to share with you today. Before we get into the topics of today's discussion, let's just talk about where we're going over the next couple of weeks between now and the end of the year. I have 5 continuing education opportunities for you between now and the end of the year. Picking up again next week, we'll have a continuing education session on truth and lies. The following week, we'll talk about permanent impairment ratings and how you can arrive at accurate impairment ratings for your evaluations. And then we'll have 3 more additional sessions before the end of the year and before we take a break for the Christmas holiday. And then we'll start in January, we'll start our Zoominar series. And I'm going to try something a little bit different in 2022. For the first 3 sessions of the month, we'll have continuing education opportunities with DWC approved course content. And then the 4th session of the month, we'll again go off the grid and do some non-continuing education discussions involved with practice building and how to improve your experience as a qualified medical evaluator. The first 3 sessions will be, of course, will require a fee to process the continuing education credit. The 4th session, for those members who purchase 3 sessions, will get the 4th session for free. So we're going to have a free practice building session with the topics that you can find nowhere else every month. So that's going to go a long way towards helping expand your QME practice. So that's what we're looking forward to in the weeks and months ahead. For today, I want to talk to you about profit leaks in the QME evaluation. And I want you to know that I speak on this topic with some authority, because even though I know I've introduced myself to all of you many times, I want to draw your attention to the last 2 line items here on my introduction. In 2018, I opened a new company under the name of QME DataWorks. And QME DataWorks is an ongoing existing company that provides virtual QME office administrative services for qualified medical evaluators of all specialties. And then in 2021, we created a separate and distinct branch of QME DataWorks, specifically handling the needs of chiropractors. So it's this experience that I'm sharing with you today, wherein we schedule many evaluations and we process many QME evaluations. Now, back when I was a single provider myself, scheduling and processing only my own evaluations, it was difficult with that volume to be able to observe trends and patterns in the industry and in the business. But now, since 2018, since I've had the opportunity to process hundreds and much more volume of cases, I can see patterns, trends, and themes that recur over and over again in this industry. And I want to share that with you today, combined with my alliances with other high volume qualified medical evaluators and groups such as CSIM. So I'm sharing with you some secrets of the volume providers that also apply to you and your evaluations on a smaller scale, but that are present nonetheless, which are contributing to sapping or threatening the profitability of your evaluation. So that's what I want to share with you in today's discussion. So let's take a look at the medical legal fee schedule, so we're all on the same page with fees and times. So as you know, the new medical legal fee schedule, which went into effect on April 1st, 2021, contains all new billing codes that include a flat rate reimbursement. So, for example, the initial evaluation carries with it a flat rate billing fee of $2,015. Now, for this, the Division of Workers' Compensation expects that this evaluation will consume approximately 6 hours of your time, give or take. Some will take a little bit more and you'll make a little bit less money per hour. Some will take a little bit less and you'll make a little bit more money per hour, but the basic estimate is 6 hours. The reevaluation consists of approximately 4 hours of your time. This is what the Division of Workers' Compensation estimates. Supplemental reports should consume approximately 2 hours of your time, for which you'll be paid the standard rate of $325 per hour. So therefore, you should set 2 hours as your goal on a supplemental report, okay? And then for sub-rosa videotaping, again, we get $325 per hour. So for all activities as qualified medical evaluators, except for deposition testimony, the Division of Workers' Compensation expects us to be paid about $325 per hour. And they've set limits as to what they consider to be a normal range of time for each of these levels, services, and for each of these evaluations. So as an example, for the initial evaluation, the Division of Workers' Compensation estimates that an initial evaluation should consume about 6 hours. They've divided that 6 hours among the following activities. The review of records, they estimate should take about 2 hours, considering that we receive, say, 199 pages of medical records. They consider 100 pages per hour review of records to be the standard time. So they estimate that an evaluation could consume as much as 2 hours on the review of records. For the face-to-face evaluation, they estimate that we should spend approximately 2 hours on the face-to-face evaluation. And then in report writing, they estimate that it should take us about 2 hours to complete and mail and submit and affix postage and all that stuff to submit our report. 2, 2, and 2. Now, we have the latitude to be able to shift these times in any way that best fits the evaluation. So the review of records perhaps might only take an hour and a half, and the face-to-face evaluation might only take an hour and a half, but the report writing could take 3 hours. And this is just an example. So we have the latitude to be able to shift those times. But what's not included in these estimates from the Division of Workers' Compensation is what takes place behind the scenes. So would you agree with me that for every review of records, there's a lot of activity that takes place behind the scenes? For example, behind the scenes, you have to ensure that you get the records, okay? And that takes time, effort, and energy to do that behind the scenes, not included in this estimate. For the face-to-face evaluation, there's behind the scenes activity required to even bring to fruition a face-to-face evaluation. We have to get the doctor to the evaluation. We have to get the examinee to the evaluation. We have to get the interpreter to the evaluation. There's a lot of things that have to successfully take place in order to even have a face-to-face evaluation, and the same thing for the report writing. So behind the scenes, every one of these cycles of action requires some administrative behind the scenes action. And so therefore, when we consider the fees proposed under the new medical legal fee schedule, what does the fee actually pay for? What are the cycles of action and activities that the fees pay for? Well, I'm sure that this is not rocket science to you. You can figure this out yourself, but the fee has to cover all of the administrative costs, and it has to cover all the costs associated with the evaluation. And that makes sense, but there's a surprise here. There's a third element that the evaluation has to pay for, and I want you to pay very close attention to this concept. I need you to understand this concept if you want to remain profitable as a qualified medical evaluator. Now, if you're a single practitioner QME evaluator with maybe up to 10 offices, you may not have identified this as either a trend, a pattern, or a statistic. But across the industry right now, and I can confirm this with the volume of cases that we schedule, there's approximately a 35% changed appointment rate. Now, the changed appointment rate can consist of any type of a change of an appointment, a postponing of the appointment, a rescheduling of the appointment, a canceling of the appointment. Now, all of those appointment changes carry with them the same costs. There is administrative cost to those appointment changes. There are doctor costs to those changes of appointments as well. So let me just give you a couple of examples. And this is what you're dealing with, although you may not have identified it as occurring because it doesn't occur in the same volume that we see, but this is occurring to you. And this is a statistic across the industry in general, a 35% appointment change rate. And I was just reading last night on the CSIMS messaging board, and doctors on the CSIMS messaging board were complaining of this very thing. Their appointments are dwindling because they're being canceled or changed somehow. So I just give you a couple of examples, and we'll do a screen share here. I'm going to bring up a document. This is a document that we just received. You'll notice this is dated October 29th. So today's November 3rd. We just received this document yesterday. And it says, "Dear Doctor," it says, "I represent the defendant in the above referenced workers' compensation claim. The applicant is currently scheduled to be evaluated by you in coming up in December. Please be advised, the parties are pending a trial decision on the issue of whether applicant's attorney validly obtained the panel in which you appeared. Defendant requests that you cancel the appointment until this dispute is resolved, and if you do decide to go forward with it, we will not be liable for any costs incurred." Okay, so what's happening here with this letter, and this is happening to you, and it's happening across the industry, is the parties allowed the qualified medical evaluator to schedule the appointment. And the qualified medical evaluator in this case went through every single possible step to confirm that the appointment was a good appointment, was a valid appointment, was a compensable appointment, that the qualified medical evaluator was the last man standing on the panel, and that no one involved had any objection to the qualified medical evaluator as the last man standing. And they allowed the process to become scheduled. Okay. The reason they allowed it to become scheduled was so that they could, quote unquote, get it on schedule. This is important for the parties, is to get it on schedule. So they allowed the qualified medical evaluator to go through all the procedure of getting it scheduled, only to then cancel the appointment. And this is happening. This is happening across the industry. And I'm going to share with you why this is happening. I'm going to share with you what you can do about this in terms of sustaining your profitability. So that's one example. Another example is just before this call this afternoon, we got an email here for another one of our doctors. And it says we had just scheduled an appointment for an examination, for an examinee. And we just get an email this afternoon that says the applicant, meaning the examinee, advised us after the appointment was scheduled, after all the admin was done, after all the parties agreed on a day, date, time, after all that was done, the applicant attorney writes us and says, the examinee has advised us he's going to be out of town from December 13 to January 2nd. What does that mean? The examinee is going out of town for Christmas and New Year's, correct? So it says, could you please reschedule the appointment? Could you please reschedule the appointment? So this is happening to you as well. And when this happens, you need to take notice that it is happening. And there are some things that you can control and some things that you can't control. And I'm going to help differentiate between those for you. Okay. So the fee has to cover all your costs of the evaluation. And the fee also has to cover all the costs of the evaluations that don't keep. Now you need to get this concept. The evaluations that don't keep, this evaluation that was just canceled, has costs associated with it. And the costs associated with that, setting up that appointment, has to be paid from the pool of monies that come from the appointments that do keep. Do you follow that? It's like in your clinical practice. If you have 10 patients scheduled for the day and only 8 show, it's those 8 that are paying for all the costs associated with establishing a facility and creating all of the infrastructure for 10. All the costs are borne by 8. So unless you want to extract these costs from your savings or from your clinical practice, it has to come from the pool of money that you receive out of your QME practice. And these forces conspire to drive your profitability down. And I have an action plan for you on that as to how to combat that. So let's talk about it. What are the sources of lost profitability, and therefore where can we potentially find new avenues for profitability when operating under a fixed and flat rate reimbursement scheme? Well, I have some ideas for you on how to control your admin costs. I have some ideas for you as to how to shave costs and increase profitability in the face-to-face and also in the report writing process. And we'll break these down one at a time as we go. So let's talk about admin. So admin, I have the procedures and processes involved with admin separated out into those processes that you can control and those processes that you cannot control. And unfortunately, there are things in this industry that we cannot control. So that being true, we are going to have appointments canceled. We are going to have appointments rescheduled. We are going to have examinees who show up late to the appointment and cut into our face-to-face time. We are going to have instances where the examinee shows up with their paperwork not done. There are going to be things outside of our own control. So therefore, the things that are within our control, we need to take iron fist control. Otherwise, the profitability of the evaluation will simply dwindle down to undesirable levels, okay? Let's put it that way. So if you have a scheduling procedure that allows these evaluations to not keep, there are things that you can do to improve your scheduling procedure. I'll share those with you. If you have a confirmation procedure that is working not well, in other words, you have examinees not showing up to the appointment, you have interpreters not showing to the appointment, maybe you have a satellite location and you get to the satellite location and the door is locked because of a poor confirmation. There are things that you can control regarding the confirmation procedure to better control the outcome. I'll share that with you. If you have a poor billing procedure, this is one of the worst. This is one of the worst. And I hear this from qualified medical evaluators all day. They call me up and they say, they just got an EOB and fill in the blank. Either none of the evaluation got paid for, maybe the evaluation got paid for, but the interpreter didn't get paid for, or maybe the extra page count didn't get paid for. In other words, the billing didn't get reimbursed properly. And if your billings are not getting reimbursed properly the first time through, okay, get this through your head right now. The only way to make any money in this business is to have everything work the first time through. When you have to perform second cycles of action, you're losing profitability, and especially on the billing, because when your billing doesn't get properly paid, you then have to do what? You have to resubmit the billing. You have to wait another 60 days on top of the 60 days you already waited, and there's no profitability left. So the principle is all of this stuff has to be done perfectly the first time through in the hope that you can control it in a single cycle of action. Now, there's things that we can control with regarding the service of our report that will improve the profitability of our report. And I sent out a discussion today about electronic service of records. I'm suggesting that all of you convert to electronic service of records, because think about it. Think about it. The cumbersome, bulky procedure of submitting your reports by snail mail, right? 100 pages of copy machine, papers, envelopes, postage, a trip to the post office. All of that can be eliminated with a single click of the mouse. So that's something that you can control on your very next evaluation. Now, there's some things that we can't control as well. So sometimes, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, like Brian Tracy says, Brian Tracy, the motivational speaker, says, 95% of all the problems you'll ever encounter come with hair. It has to deal with people issues. And sometimes, no matter how hard you try, the appointment will cancel. You'll do everything right, but the appointment will cancel. The appointment will reschedule. The appointment will postpone. No matter how hard you try, the examinee or the interpreter will show up late, or they might not even show, even when you get a confirmation from both that they will show. It's possible that you can be there waiting and one or both of the other may not show. It's possible that you could have incomplete information on the demographics. Imagine that you send out materials to the examinee. You send out materials to the examinee in advance of the evaluation, like paperwork that you want the examinee to fill out. Imagine that you send it out. You do what you're supposed to do. You're right on time. You're being efficient. and 4 days later, the mail comes back, wrong address. Has that ever happened to you? That's happened to you. Wrong address, correct? So then requires a second cycle of action. And the purpose of today's discussion is to help you declare war on second cycles of action. Now, you might think, well, Perry, you're making all this stuff up. You're making all this stuff up. Well, what I want to share with you is going to convince you that that's not so. What I want to share with you are some recent notes that come out of a California Workers' Compensation Institute conference meeting in June 2021. Now, this took place right after the implementation of the new medical legal fee schedule. And at this time, all the parties were starting to understand the added cost of the page count of review of records, and they were looking for ways to further reduce the cost of the medical legal evaluation. So there was a conference, and it's included claims adjusters, and they got together to talk about reducing costs. So I want to share with you a couple passages that came out of those notes. With regards to procedures to reduce costs, the claims adjusters are developing a new set of procedures to evaluate the claim for early resolution. Evaluate the claim for early resolution. Now, let me ask you, when do you think the process begins of the parties evaluating the claim for early resolution? I'll just tell you. The process begins when the QME evaluation gets on the calendar. When it gets on the calendar, when the QME evaluation is set, the parties then initiate a sequence of steps to eliminate the need for your evaluation. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? It's the setting of the evaluation by you that begins the negotiation process between the parties to evaluate the claim for early settlement. Another claims adjuster, claims administrator, said that his procedure was to evaluate the claim for early resolution, that he does a thorough review of the medical file as soon as the exam is set. As I said, the setting of the exam with you sets in motion a series of events designed to eliminate you or the need for you. In fact, this particular claims adjuster said that his strategy involves trying to settle the claim and offer even more money, perhaps $5,000 to $10,000 more, to avoid the 20% increase in fees just related to the QME review of records. This is not to even mention the increase in fees that could result from the QME's recommendation. What if the QME recommends MRIs, pain management consultations, hand specialist consultations, ultrasound studies, functional restoration programs? In other words, the qualified medical evaluator to the claims administrator, and I can tell you this because I was in committee meetings, the qualified medical evaluator represents a wild card, a loose gun for the claims administrator, and the claims administrator is attempting to even offer more money to settle the claim in advance of your evaluation in the hope that your evaluation will not even be necessary. So I hope you get your attention on that the evaluations that you keep have to pay for not only those evaluations, but they also have to pay for the evaluations that you're losing, and you're losing about 35% of all the evaluations. So let's go through a couple of suggestions for you. With regards to your administrative activity, the principle is You have to eliminate second cycles of action. Eliminate all second cycles of action. And then here's a couple of ideas. So, on your scheduling procedure, you need to get all information in one cycle of action. Get all the information that you need to confirm that the appointment is a compensable appointment to which no party can have any objection to you as the last man standing or any objection to having the appointment actually move forward. So a couple of suggestions that I have for you. Most of you will get demographics and the panel. Demographics and the panel as part of your appointment request from either the applicant attorney or maybe from the claims administrator. I'm suggesting that you also insist on a copy of QME Form 106, and then also on insisting for copies of the strike letters that indicate that you indeed are the last person standing, okay? Now, I was speaking with a QME yesterday, and she had an evaluation for which she had no cover letters. She had no strike letters. She had no QME Form 106. All she had was a request for an appointment from an applicant attorney. She had no ideas to the scope of the evaluation. She had no cover letters. And I'm suggesting to you that if you proceed with appointments like that, the likelihood of you getting not paid is much, much higher than if you put your scheduling process through this procedure of getting all the necessary information up front in a single cycle of action. Your confirmation procedure, to the best of your ability, needs to be done in one cycle of action. You need to declare war on second cycles of action. The way to make money as a qualified medical evaluator is to have the whole evaluation from start to finish complete itself in the first cycle of action. If you need to call the examinee twice, 3 times, leave messages, call the applicant attorney and say, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of the examinee, but I can't get a hold of the examinee. Can you call the examinee and have the examinee call me? And these cycles of action accumulate. It's threatening the profitability of the evaluation. The billing procedure needs to be done in one cycle of action. So get your head on straight as to what it is you're billing. Your modifiers are correct. Make sure your report includes all the necessary elements that it's supposed to. It includes cover letters, and that your billing is proper and submitted to the proper billing address. Sometimes these claims administrators use a separate billing address versus the address for all correspondence to the claims administrator. In other words, it's a separate address where the billing is supposed to be submitted. That's not something that you want to learn about 60 days later when you make your first collection call. Where's my payment? And you learn about this 60 days later and then have to repeat the cycle of action. So you want this done in a single cycle of action. Again, I want to talk about electronic service of records. We're now doing electronic service of records here. I suggest you all convert to electronic service of records because it's such a time saver. It's such a money saver. I estimate that a 35-page report sent to 4 parties will save you about $17 for each report if you submit it electronically. Now, that's just the hard cost. It doesn't even include the time of going to the post office, the time of printing out, 140 pages of records. So snail mail is something that you can do in an extremely short cycle of action. And I'm suggesting that everyone convert to electronic service of records. Now, despite all of this, again, there are some things that we just cannot control, such as the appointment canceling, such as the appointment rescheduling, such as the appointment being postponed, all of which is threatening the profitability of your evaluation. We can't control the examinee no-show. So if these things happen, these things are happening, if appointments are canceling, examinees are no showing, you're getting the wrong address, if these things are happening, how can you offset those lost costs? What can you do? Where can you control costs? If there's areas where you can't control costs, where can you control costs? Well, one of the best places to control costs where you can exert control is in the face-to-face evaluation and in the report writing process. So now I want to share with you some ideas as to how to structure your face-to-face evaluation to maximize your profitability. So there are things that you can do to confirm that everything is proper with the location, with the interpreter, and with the examinee. And you should have a process in place to confirm all of those people in advance. Now, I like to say that the QME process, the QME evaluation, is the control business. You want to take control over each of these steps, because guess what? If you don't take iron fist control over it, will it ever happen? Can you count on anyone else to get the examinee there? No. Can you count on anyone to get the interpreter there? No. You have to make it happen yourself. Are you hearing me? This is the control business, and the single step that you drop out control on, guess which step will come back to bite you? The one you drop out control. So we're in the control business. What about the examinee and having the examinee's paperwork completed? Have you ever gotten to an evaluation and the examinee shows up and the paperwork?
Can everybody go on mute, please?
Okay, so you get to the examination and the examinee doesn't have their paperwork completed. Now you might think I'm making this up. I had a case recently where the examinee showed up with the paperwork completed, and for some reason I was still using all of these questionnaires and stuff, which I've now discarded. And the examinee and the interpreter were extremely slow, and I was sitting there, and it actually took them 1 hour, 1 hour to complete the paperwork, and they weren't even completed. But at the 1 hour mark, I went over and I simply took the paperwork and I said, that will be fine. We'll continue now. And I've since concluded that you can take even better control over this procedure. Now, if you call the examinee in advance and you insist that the examinee complete the paperwork in advance of the evaluation, and the examinee tells you that indeed they will comply with your instruction and complete the paperwork prior to the evaluation, that don't mean they're going to complete the paperwork. That doesn't mean they're going to complete the paperwork. So in fact, you should be skeptical that they're going to complete their paperwork, because guess what? They would rather complete the paperwork on their time, on your time, than on their time. So I've since adopted a new procedure that if the examinee does not come to the evaluation with the paperwork completed, we don't need the paperwork. We don't need the paperwork. We're proceeding without the paperwork. Okay. So there are things you can control. You can call the examinee, insist that they cooperate in completing the paperwork. But if they don't complete the paperwork, in order to salvage the profitability of your evaluation, the evaluation must begin on time. What did I say? The evaluation must begin on time. Okay? Everyone say that. The evaluation must begin on time. We don't wait for the examinee to complete the paperwork. Before the evaluation, what can you do? What else can you do to streamline the evaluation such that the evaluation can be time efficient? Because this evaluation has to not only pay for itself in 6 hours or less, it also has to pay for the evaluations that are not keeping. Okay, so what else can you do? Well, the most important thing you can do is to establish the scope of the evaluation in advance and get to the evaluation knowing what it is that you're doing, knowing that This is an evaluation under Labor Code 4060. I know what I'm doing. This is an evaluation under 4061. I know what questions I'm asking in the history. This is an evaluation under Labor Code 4062. I know exactly what physical examination maneuvers I'm doing such that I can get in, get out, and get it done. You can review the questions in the cover letters that you get in advance of the evaluation. I know a lot of qualified medical evaluators, they show up to the evaluation and they do the same procedure over and over and over again as a shotgun type procedure, hoping that they hit the major high notes and satisfy the parties without going into the evaluation targeted and focused. As I said, I was with a QME yesterday and she spent so much time in the evaluation and so much time on writing her report and didn't know what she was doing that she had to hire me to help her get through this thing, which abolished any profitability that there was in that evaluation for her. So this is something that you want to do in advance, is you want to know the questions that the parties are going to request of you that they want you to address so that you can go to the evaluation and get those answers. Okay, and get those answers and show up prepared. This allows you to target the history. This allows you to target your examination. And when you're in the examination, you want to cut out all the unnecessary examination procedures that don't apply. Half of your examination procedures that you're doing are examination procedures that you're bringing into the evaluation from your clinical practice. And your clinical practice is a different hat than the medical legal physical examination. Medical legal physical examination, we're simply doing an examination to determine the presence or the absence, okay? The presence that's either there or it's not there, the presence or the absence of impairments. We're not looking for diagnoses. We're not examining for diagnoses. So examine for the impairments and bring your physical examination procedure down only to that which is absolutely necessary. Always ask yourself in the physical examination, what's objective here? What's objective? We have in front of us an examinee. An examinee is a subjectivity machine, correct? The examinee is going to tell us all their subjectivity. Our job as a qualified medical evaluator is to determine what's objective. So always ask yourself what's objective. And if you can get to what is and what is not objective, you can greatly streamline the examination and greatly streamline your decision-making process and get this thing done. Now, again, in the face-to-face evaluation, and this just happens, it just happens. Things happen. There's things out of our control that just happen. Guess what? The things that happen to us that are bad get paid for out of the evaluations that keep. Therefore, it's extra necessary that you control what you can control. And even though you may not control the satellite location, I got to a satellite location a few months ago for an evaluation. I was there 20 minutes early. The examinee was there 25 minutes early, along with the interpreter. They were there waiting for me. We waited for 20 minutes for the office to open at 9 a.m. Guess what? It didn't open. We called. It didn't open. We called. It didn't open. We called. Finally, the office opened at 9:50. Are you hearing me? 9:50. Wanted to kill somebody. These things happen. There are things we can't control, and those get paid for under the evaluations that we keep. Okay. The interpreter, the examinee, late, no paperwork, no show. If these things do happen, then these things that we can control have to be under iron fist control. Are you following me? Then, with regards to the report writing process, what are the things that we cannot control? Okay, in the other sections, we talked about things we could control and then the things we could not control. Let's reverse these now. For the report writing process, what is there involved with the report writing process that we cannot control? Well, luckily, nothing. The report writing process is something that's completely under our control. We can take the report writing process and do with it what we need to do with it, what we will do with it. what we want to do with it. Okay? Like what? What can we control? Well, what I'm suggesting is that you control your distribution of time in the report writing process. Now, remember back 30 minutes ago when I showed you that chart from the DWC, the 2 hours, 2 hours, and 2 hours, review of records, 2 hours, face-to-face, 2 hours, report writing process, 2 hours. So in the report writing time block, when you're sitting down at your computer writing the report, you want to focus your time and your energy and your concentration to certain parts of the report that are more important than other parts of the report. The parts of the report are the parts of the report that deal with the issues in dispute, okay? So, for example, when the new medical legal fee schedule became effective April 1st, 2021, we dropped out of our template the social history, the social history. The social history was important and relevant under the old fee schedule. Under the new fee schedule, where time is of the essence and our evaluations have to be compressed and we have to wear Nike running shoes to get it done, time is compressed. It's not really relevant. Social history is not really relevant. What is relevant? What's relevant is the issue in dispute. So you focus on the issue in dispute by answering the questions that the parties pose to us in their cover letters. And I want to share with you what the law says about this and why this is important. So I'm going to go to California Code of Regulation 35.5. Can everyone see that? Dr. Stanmeyer, give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Okay. This is California Code of Regulation 35.5. I want to go to section C here, which deals with our responsibility as qualified medical evaluators. It says, second sentence, the reporting evaluator shall attempt to address each question raised by each party in the issue cover letter sent to the evaluator. Now, I can tell you, I speak to attorney groups, and I'm also on the report quality committee at DWC. The parties are going to be insisting on this. Dr. Monahan, can you mute? Dr. Monahan, can you mute?
You're, as the host, you're able to mute all of the.
I'm muted. It's not me.
It's Dr. Z. That's
Oh
not
my
mute.
God. Oh my God, sorry. I thought I'm mute.
So the reporting evaluator shall attempt to address each question raised by each party in the issue cover letter. So the parties know this law now. They know this law, and they're going to be insisting that we as qualified medical evaluators address the questions. So where should you focus your time? Should you focus your time on telling us what was the finding of the reflexes? Should you focus your time on telling us what the sensory exam findings were? Or should you focus your time on what the parties are asking of us? See, the exam section is only relevant to the extent that it allows us to answer the questions. So you want to focus your time on answering the questions in the issue cover letter. That's something that you can control. So you want to redistribute your time away from the physical exam and into answering the discussion questions that the parties ask of us. And this is something that's completely under your control. And in this way, you can take your report writing process and condense it down to what's most relevant and save time such that your evaluation is profitable and can not only pay for itself, but can also pay for the appointments that don't keep, that change, for the examinee that's late, and all the other forces and factors that conspire to threaten the profitability of your evaluation. So in short, here's the take-home message. Take-home message is, in all things, you want to complete all activities in a short and single cycle of action. You want to declare war on multiple cycles of action. I'll tell you a story. So many of you know me, I'm a chiropractor. I once had this patient in my chiropractic practice. This was years ago. She would come in for an adjustment. I would give her a chiropractic adjustment. She would say she felt great. And then either later that day or the next day, she would come in and she would say, I don't feel quite right. And I'm not asking for another adjustment. I just want you to check me and make sure that everything's still in place and that I'm good. And I would go, And she would lay down on the table and I would check her out. And sure enough, everything's fine. And in 2 cycles of action, I received 1 fee for service. Now, I would rather that she gave me half the fee for the 1 adjustment, because her plan cost me 2 time cycles, half the fee, but for 2 time cycles. Can you see how I really only got 1/4 of my fee for the 1 cycle of action that I rendered? So in all actions, you want to complete them in a single cycle of action. All your intake, scheduling, confirming, every procedure, every piece of data that you need. You don't want to be calling the examinee back up and repeating yourself. The report writing process, everything has to be done in a single cycle of action. This is what allows you to absorb the lost opportunity cost of the canceled, rescheduled, lost appointments, and other second cycles of action, such as sending in your billing for another time and another 60-day waiting period. So these are some suggestions that I have for you that will help improve the profitability of your evaluation and allow you to continue to practice and enjoy being a qualified medical evaluator. I'd now like to open it up to a discussion for others to share any ideas that they might have as to how they improve the profitability of their evaluations also. So is there anyone who has anything to contribute? And I'll check the chat also.
Doc, I have a question.
Yes.
If you mentioned when they don't provide their paperwork and say you're dealing with an interpreter and you know it's going to be an hour and you just tell them that's fine, we go forward. How do you address the RU-91 that we would not have completed prior to the report writing?
How do you address the RU-91? So let's, well, before we provide an answer for that, let's ask ourselves, what is the relevance of the RU-91 in this particular case? So for example, if you know that this RU-91 is going to be relevant for this case, then you would need to get it done. When is the RU-91 relevant?
Okay, well, you're looking at, if you're asking if it's a compensability exam, you're looking more at the ADLs. That would be more important to be looking for when you have found or determined impairment and or apportionment.
So when is the RU-91 relevant? It's relevant if you have a question in the cover letter that asks you about their work status, then it would be relevant, right?
Sure.
In which case you'd need to get it. But if you have an injured worker who's continuing to work, and I'm making this up because it's a good question. I'm making this up and we're troubleshooting this together. If you have an injured worker who hasn't lost any time from work and is continuing in their full duties, it wouldn't be relevant. If the work status is not relevant, then it's not relevant. And so I'm making this up, but you would determine if it's relevant or not. If it's not relevant, you can skip it.
At the time of the exam. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
You could even decide that in advance of the exam. You know, I started looking at all the symptom questionnaires and we used to do, and those of you, my clients, you know this, we used to do exhaustive symptom questionnaires. And we would put the results of those symptom questionnaires within our template. And that was all good. But in actuality, what did that contribute to the report actually? How did it contribute to the opinions and conclusions? It really didn't. It was a good exercise and it consumed time under the old time-based billing codes, and that served us. But under a new time crunch schedule, we have to ask ourselves, what does this really contribute to the report? And some of this paperwork, really the only thing that's required is the employee's disability questionnaire when the examinee is permanent and stationary. We're required to comment on that document within the body of our report. So then it's required for a compensability evaluation. Do you need an employee's disability questionnaire? No. So this paperwork, imagine, and let's think about this. These are good questions, and somebody interrupt me because I'll get started here. I was thinking about this. How many times are we threatened by not receiving the records on time? Happens all the time, right? They come in 2 days before, 1 day before. What if the claims administrators decided we ain't even sending the QME's records? How would that impact our evaluation? Could we still carry forward with the evaluation without doing a review of records? Maybe, huh? Think about it. Could we? I could. How much do we need to review of records?
I go right ahead. Regardless of whether they send records or not, I do the eval, and I prefer that I don't have the records because then they send the records and I do it in a supplemental report. So I'm just ahead.
Sure. So probably most evaluators do the same thing. If we don't get the records, we still have to go forward and do the evaluation because non-receipt of the records is not a reason to postpone the evaluation. So we do that. We do that as part of our procedure. But let's think about it even beyond that. What if we never got the records? Could you determine the examinee's condition and their impairment and their situation? And could you create the proper outcome for them through your report without the records? It's a rhetorical question, but it traces back to the paperwork issue. How much of that paperwork is really relevant? And I'm finding, at least from my evaluations and my clients' evaluations, that it doesn't really contribute to the report. So there's a long answer to your question there, Dr. Rapoff.
Thank you.
Dr. Hill, that was a great comment. Do you have any profitability secrets for us?
Well, I wish I did. I would be happy to share them with you. I'm trying to figure it all out like everybody else. It is frustrating when they when they schedule and then you prepare the files, you put them on the calendar, and then they're on the calendar for a while and take up a space where you could have scheduled somebody else. And that's where it becomes expensive. Probably some of my, I have some attorneys that refer on a regular basis, and if they need to cancel, it's everybody's personal decision how they want to handle it. But I think the advice that you gave us some important, some good tools to use to try to mitigate the problem of them just throwing people on our schedule because they don't care about us. They, we're no more than a public toilet for them. and they don't care if they hit the target or not. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, regarding either interpreter no-shows or patient no-shows, I've become very strict on the time. And, if they no-show, they no-show. And, then I send in the no-show bill, which is nice. I'd rather just do the eval. I mean, that's what we're all here for, but it's nice to have that no-show fee.
Sure, it softens the sting just a little bit. So a couple of principles that might be new today, and we'll just close on this. A couple of principles that might be new, it might be a new revelation for you, is that I just learned this recently myself, and that is that it's the setting of the appointment that begins many sequences of events, including the sequence of events designed to eliminate the need for your evaluation. So I found that to be a bit of a shock and disconcerting, but there's nothing that can be done about it. There's nothing that can be done about it. So we have these losses because the parties are trying to resolve the case before they get to our evaluation. So we have these losses. The point is that those losses have to be paid for out of the kept appointments. So therefore, the kept appointments have to be extremely good. They have to be time efficient, targeted, time effective, focused, and targeted. Otherwise, you're going to drop below what the Division of Workers' Compensation hopes for you, which is $325 per hour, which in and of itself is a sprint. A 6-hour evaluation at $2,015, I can do, I've done those, but it has to be a simple evaluation, 1 or 2 body parts, uncomplicated issues. And even in that, it's a sprint. So sprinting is your best hope for remaining profitable. We have to get even better than sprinting on the kept appointments. And I'll just conclude it on that note. And I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I look forward to being with you next week. Next week, we have a continuing education session, truth and lies in the face-to-face evaluation. And I'm going to show you how to look your examinee in the eyes and tell in half of a heartbeat whether you're getting the straight scoop from them or not, and how to actually get the straight scoop for your examinee. So I look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Thank you.
Thank you very-
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.